Australia's worst serial killer, the most hated woman, baby killer for 20 years, Kathleen Folbigg, has been called many names. In 2003, she was convicted for killing her children, 4 of them. She spent 2 decades in jail and now her conviction has been quashed by an appeals court. Because of genetic evidence, it shows that her children may have died of natural causes. So the courts believe she is innocent. Like she said, she was 20 years ago. Her name has been cleared, she's free to go home, but at what cost? Will Australia have to pay for this miscarriage of justice? Our next report tells you.
In 1999, Australia was rocked by a shocking discovery, the death of 4 very small children. And at the centre of the saga, there was one woman, Kathleen Folbigg. She found herself accused of a crime that would change her life forever. The evidence was damning. But 20 years later, it looks like appearances and details can be deceiving. Between 1989 to 1999, Kathleen lost 4 of her children. They all died one after the other. Her first child, Caleb, was only 19 days old when he died. That was in 1989. Her second child, Patrick, died in 1991. He was just 10 months old. Her third child, Sarah, died in 1993. She was 10 months old. And her last child, Laura, died in 1999. She was barely 19 months old. So 4 very young children, 4 sudden deaths, and a mother connecting them all. All fingers pointed to Kathleen, but her original guilty verdict wasn't based on medical evidence or even circumstantial evidence. It was based on diary entries. Diary entries that she made over the years. Kathleen wrote about how difficult life with children was, how she once left her daughter to cry for 5 minutes. For many mothers, it was normal stuff, guilt that they felt every day. But for the court, it was an admission of crime.
The case against me was always about my diaries and Meadows Law. They cherry-picked words and phrases from my journals. Those books contained my private feelings, which I wrote to myself. No one expects those type of things to be read by strangers, let alone opinionated on. They took my words out of context and turned them against me. They accused me of something I never wrote about, never did, and never could do. I hope that no one else will ever have to suffer what I've suffered.
Folbigg continued to maintain her innocence, but it wasn't until 2018 that people started taking her seriously. That's because new evidence emerged. Folbigg's 2 daughters carried a rare genetic variant, one that could have led to their deaths. Her sons too had a different genetic mutation. It's been linked to sudden onset epilepsy in mice. That led scientists to believe that they may have died of natural causes. So people petitioned for Kathleen. It reached the courts. They said there was reasonable doubt. In June this year, she was pardoned by the New South Wales governor. She was finally out of prison after 20 years. Many believe this is the biggest miscarriage of justice in Australia's legal history. But it isn't the only case in the world. Mothers across the world have been wrongly accused of killing their children. It had happened before in Australia in 1982 to a woman named Lindy Chamberlain. She was convicted of the murder of her daughter. 6 years later, she was freed and the government had to pay her $872,000. In 2003, there was Britain's Sally Clark. She was convicted of murdering her sons. She was in prison for 3 years. Later, they found that the children died naturally. Clark was released. She was later found dead at home as she never recovered from the trauma. Clearly, the aftermath of wrongful convictions extends far beyond the prison gates. How does one rebuild a life shattered by false accusations?
I love my children, and I always will. I know I am one of the lucky ones. I have a chance with support to rebuild my life. But there are many other people who aren't so lucky. In our lucky country, Australia, this should not be the case. We need to be humble and open to improving the system to ensure truth is revealed, because truth and the correct legal outcomes matter. Thank you.
Kathleen's fight for justice may be over, but for Australia, this is a moment of reflection. This could be a turning point for its legal system, a mistake that they could pay for dearly. Kathleen hasn't talked compensation yet, but it could be the biggest payout in the country's history. Justice may have been served, but it came 20 years too late for Kathleen Folbigg.